in the pop-up you worked on a 40-60 split.
Yes, I did. And I quickly realised that I couldn't survive on a 40-60 split. I'd run into profit on the last day of the pop-up, but had I not, I'd have covered all of my costs about 3 or 4 weeks earlier. So it was just so stressful, sort of knowing that you just don't know whether you're going to make your money back because the overheads are so high.
Okay, so the thing that makes it necessary for it to be a 50-50 split is the overhead base. It's
the overheads. It's definitely the overheads. It's the location where I am. It's the amount of work involved. They're not movable. So it means that every single day the same cost. Every square inch of the wall costs me money, and you're taking risks all the time when you make a decision about what work you take, because you're not necessarily know whether you're going to sell anything. So. And although I feel quite passionate about the choices I make, I'm not prepared to say, oh well, because that's not selling, it has to go. I'm prepared to give it a good go before I think, well, maybe I need to revise that. But it's a huge consideration because you're paying the council, you're paying your landlords. So
what you're saying is the fixed costs. This is not about you making wonderful amounts of profit to take you to glorious places.
Right,
this is purely about there's a fixed cost set for the overheads, for the staff, for the utilities, etc., that you're paying just to open the door, turn the lights on.
That's right.
Whereas the taking of work, that presumably is essentially on consignment because you're not buying the work from people.
That's right.
Is an unknown return.
That's
it's a definite risk.
That's right.
For an unknown return.
That's right.
And therefore, the only way to balance that risk is to make it a 50-50 split.
That's right. But it's also the other costs involved are things like the costs to sell the work. So there's credit card costs. So they're additional fixed costs because you've got your systems to rent. There's also percentages on those sales. There's also eventual VAT to consider, which will come off of my 50%, not off of the artist's 50%, because the majority of artists aren't going to be VAT registered. So when you start to add that up, there's very little money left.
Yeah.
So
with VAT at 20%.
That's right.
Then that does rapidly, and again, because you're selling to somebody, on the whole you're selling to members of the public.
That's right.
So they have to pay VAT, but they can't claim it back.
That's right.
You have to charge VAT because your levels of sales are beyond the VAT threshold.
That's right.
But again, your suppliers the artists don't tend to be VAT registered.
That's right.
So you're the sort of VAT piggy in the middle in this.
Absolutely.
Which is tricky because it delivers pretty much no benefit to the client or to the supplier, but you can't get around it.
That's right.
Yeah. Makes for tricky things.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it very rapidly eats into your margins.
That's right.
So here we are sitting downstairs. Downstairs I never knew existed. So although it is a tricky balance from a business model perspective, it's clearly working.
Yes, it is. It is.
And you're expanding into your 2 downstairs spaces.
That's right.
Tell me about the plans for those.
The plans for downstairs, I'm hoping to have another 2 gallery spaces. One will be a flexible sort of consultancy space, so making good use of the walls with artwork. So I'll be able to talk to clients and clients' needs and requirements from down here. Also have a 3rd space, which will be, again, another sort of mixed usage space which means I can do a little bit more sort of conceptual work that doesn't necessarily mean it has a direct correlation between a commercial return, something that gets people thinking. I can also work with other organisations to do with children's artwork, which I'm quite passionate about. Also people that produce an artwork from maybe have mental health issues. So I'll be able to maybe hire the space out to artists. I can also have dedicated exhibitions. It'll give me much more flexibility to use the 3 spaces in different ways.
Without significantly adding to your cost base once you've converted it.
Absolutely.
So what this means is 3 times the space for a marginal increase in fixed costs.
That's right. I mean, there's the costs to develop it, the probably additional costs for probably things like staff, and probably additional costs in terms of maybe having some sort of video in or some security.
Yeah.